Alright, welcome to episode 97 of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode, we saw the conclusion, the peace treaty, of World War III, the largest war the entire world has seen. They might change the borders in Mesopotamia a little bit, just in the central region, but otherwise, this is entirely the same. And today's episode, we're going to be looking at all the things that happened after that, which is what the rest of the series is going to be. But this one's more the consequences. There's not going to be a huge load of consequences other than like everything. But yeah, should be quite fun. I kind of like doing these sorts of episodes. And sorry, I haven't recorded one of these in ages. But no, the power balance in the world is also entirely shaken up, so that's a load of fun. I'm going to start off by doing power rankings wherever they are. They're over here, because now the number one country in the entire world is the Franco Union. So they've taken their spot in the number one position, which is pretty impressive. They do have a lot of very valuable land if you look at the past of the series. Second spot is over here in Asia in the Korean country, which is absolutely massive at this point, stretching all the way close to the Pink Team's capital city. Third spot goes to the Ganjiata country over here in northern India. They have some very valuable Indian territory and better coastal access, so that's good. And then fourth is the Italians, the other major power in the world. Yeah, fifth is Russia. Russia's projected to take over the other four ones above them if they continue to stay stable and if their economy can grow. But at the moment, Russia isn't very stable. They lost a load of money. They're completely nuked, and the population has gone down by at least to 20th, but probably at least like 10% of people pre-war in Russia are dead, and they've also had like nobody being born across the war, so that really sucks. And then sixth is Indochina, who's just not as good as Russia, but they're kind of close, I suppose, and they're doing pretty well. They didn't get nuked. Well, they got nuked quite a lot, but not too much. Then Norway is in seventh. Eighth is the Americans, who've managed to get into the top 10 now. 9 is Tibet, which is pretty impressive. But like I said before, China invested a lot into that region. And then 10th is northern Brazil, which is a blue country over here. And northern Brazil is perhaps the country that is doing the best when you match it with like economy and stuff. So they're doing the best for how economically powerful they are. And that's going to lead Brazil to declare war on a country very close to them, this nation over here in the brown team. And the interesting thing about the brown team is that they were using the Carthaginian currency, and nobody wants to use the Carthaginian currency anymore because it just collapsed during the war because Carthage lost the war and fell into a civil war, and loads of bad things happened to them. So it's a really bad currency to be using, and it's unfortunate for the brown team because they're going to lose a lot of these cities right by the border of Brazil. And this lakey area, the Brazilians will naval invade across these islands, and they just make lots of small landings all across these areas of this country. The main coastal, or the main capital and city area up here, it's over here. So the Brazilians are going to push across the coast. This country's military has seen huge reductions as the country can't really afford to finance it anymore, and their economy has gone into a huge recession as the majority of their trading partners, apart from Brazil, use the same currency as them. Like one of the major ones was Carthage, and they lost that during the war. So yeah, in like a few months, if that, this country will capitulate over to the Brazilians. So in a peace treaty, it will be fully annexed by Brazil, which is kind of good for the people in a way. I mean, they're not going to be super happy, but they're also kind of like, well, our economy is now kind of going to be fixed. So Brazil will annex this territory, and they start to get slightly larger in South America. Sorry. This could actually be the second South American war we've ever had. There's the Amazonian one, and then Brazil was involved in that. But technically, we also had three South American wars in the middle of World War III, as the Chilean country down here invaded this island, Horn Island, and both of these countries invaded Carthaginian islands, which got them, two nuclear bombs each. You didn't get any nukes there, which kind of sucks. But yeah, I forgot to mention, there's nukes scattered all over the world. In the Arabic Union, it was more the more powerful countries who took nukes and strengthened their own stuff. And whilst in China, basically all the countries got nukes apart from you, which sucks for you. I mean, even Baikal got 2 nukes. Korea doesn't have any nukes though, and neither does Indochina, so that kind of sucks for them. But the Philippines has 2. Anyway, yeah, nukes are really scattered around the world, and it's kind of concerning. But I'm sure there won't be any more nuclear warfare. The unfortunate thing is the new kind of mentality in the world isn't like, oh, we need to make sure that a nuclear war never happens again. Many countries, especially in Eurasia, are thinking, instead of, oh, we need to make sure that never happens again, I need to get nukes so I can protect myself. And that's kind of concerning. One of these countries is Poland, as a group of Polish people are going to kind of break into Russia, who's in the middle of having a horrible time at the moment, and steal a load of nuclear bombs from Russia, which is a really weird thing to do, but they do it, and it works. So Poland, which is a nation that is fairly weakened by how many nukes have gone off in their own territory, goes all the way up to 6 nuclear... Okay, I forgot it's 26, never mind. 6 nuclear bombs, and the Russians are going to go down to just 30, which kind of sucks for them. But Russia has an interesting situation in their country at the moment. They actually gained a lot of Ukrainian stuff, which is really good for them, but they lost a lot of other things that are kind of good, like the Aral Republic. That kind of sucks. But Russia's in this interesting situation where a lot of the people who survived the war, and weren't killed fighting and stuff, and weren't scarred by war, they were nuclear engineers because the Russians needed them to maintain their nuclear bombs. So, in an effort to maintain the Russian economy and keep their country afloat and alive, the Russians are going to do something kind of controversial, which is make more nuclear bombs. Now that's weird. I wouldn't exactly advise that as something to do, but the Russians are going to go all the way up back to 36 nuclear bombs, and that's only 6 nukes because the Russians before that could have made like 20 in one episode, and they're still kind of capable of that, and that's because they're selling nuclear bombs. I mean, just making them wouldn't make you any money. But we're going to return to northern Brazil once again, as the Russians have now sold 6 nuclear bombs to the northern Brazilians, and that's concerning. Just a little bit concerning. I don't think any other countries at this point probably want to buy any nukes from Russia, but there's definitely opportunity for this to occur. The Russians are now selling nuclear bombs. As their economy starts to get better again, and this is to pick up where they were before, the Russians definitely sell more than just 6 in one episode. So yeah, that's something to keep a watch on. And the world is like this. That's pretty bad. You shouldn't do that. But also, Russia's not in a great spot. Look how many green dots there are. If we look at like Britain, that's a lot of there. France has got a lot. Spain has quite a lot. And just the rest of Iberia, like the pink country, has had a lot of nukes. Catalonia's only been hit by 2. Northern Italy's pretty bad. Germany's a huge mess. Norway and Scandinavia's pretty awful. Finland wasn't hit by a single one. Bulgaria's not having a great time. Neither is Romania. Just this Western Russian territory is pretty bad. There's like a big section over here in the Central Asian Ural region, and then up here in Siberia near Krasnoyarsk. This red country and a lot of northern China is in a bad spot, and so is the Korean Peninsula. The blue country, I'm not really sure if you can see with them, but yeah, there's quite a few in their country as well. Tibet has got off pretty well. Indochina actually has a lot more than I thought, but that's still kind of fine. The Ganjati country hasn't been hit by too many. Pakistan is an absolutely irradiated wasteland, and so both of these countries, which we should probably talk about because they both extremely hate each other at this point. I'm not sure I phrased that right. Oh, Caucasia's in a bad spot too. But these countries really, 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 really hate each other. But the unfortunate thing is that technically they are both in a military alliance, and that brings me on to our next topic, which is alliances. What's going on with those? So let's start off with the Arabic Union's alliance, and we'll just see where we go from there. Because of course the Arabic Union no longer exists, so goodbye to them. Also, these territories, they're like actual kind of colonies of all these countries. It's not just overseas territories or something. Yeah, those are like actual core parts of a nation. So it's weird. But the remnants of this alliance, because the alliance will still be existing, they kind of go. A lot of other random countries, like Spain, Tanzania, and the blue country, they all leave. In America, we see the Americans stay, but Texas and the pink country both leave their alliances. Over in Australia, all 3 of these countries are going to be leaving their alliances, even though especially in the pink country, they've got a pretty similar culture to some other countries who might be staying. We see the red country leave their alliance, along with Java, and the Borneo country, who I forgot, is also a radiated wasteland. China has lost their alliance. The pink country will leave their alliance, so does Pakistan. And then we see the salmon country leave the Circle alliance. And I think, apart from you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, that's everyone who's leaving alliance. So this is the alliance map that we have in the world. First off, let's look at the Circle alliance, because it's going to be gaining 1 new member, which is pretty impressive. But it's a country who actually joined during the war, and it's of course the nation of Romania. So Romania, they had a lot of thoughts during the war, during the post-war period, I mean, about should they join the war? Should they join this alliance back? Should they be allowed to stay in it? But they decide, yeah, why not? They've got a very strategic position as well. I also forgot another very major country who should join this, which is the Dutch. The Dutch, of course, were a major war goal for the Franco Union in Norway to liberate the Dutch country. So now we have this team of 5 allied nations. America is actually staying with it, weirdly enough, and then the Franco Union, the Netherlands, Norway, and Romania. So that's pretty good for them. Russia's alliance will be existing still between the Russian allies of the remnants of the Minsk country and then all of Mongolia, which is still kind of doing okay. They kept the lands in the old Blue country and Baikal, but they lost some stuff to Tibet. And then kind of new. All these alliances are kind of new, except for the Russian one, which is just Russia's alliance, but worse. We had this new North Indian Central Asian alliance, led probably by the Gangetic country, but it also includes nations like Tibet, the Kashmiri country, and also Central Asia, which stops Central Asia from going to war with the Salmon country because they would get absolutely obliterated. A lot of their cities have been nuked to bits, so they're not going to have a great time. The Aral country also exists, and they're not really doing a whole lot because they're just South Aral, and they don't have as many cities as they could have done. And they've also been nuked quite a lot. The other major alliance thing is economic alliances, so I'm going to update those. This is probably what the alliance, or the economic alliance map of the world looks like. So the Circle Alliance led by the Arabic Union has completely collapsed at this point, which is pretty sad. And the Russian alliance has stayed between... Actually, they probably wouldn't stay, to be honest. The Russians, maybe they'd remake it, but I think at this point they're going to leave and just go kind of isolationist. They've got both their allies, but you know what? That's the end of that alliance. Then we have the Indian, the North African or West African, and the remnants of the Chinese Economic Alliance. So the Gangetic country wasn't in the alliance; they were in the Indian one, which they kind of led, although it wasn't even their currency. So it's a really, really strange spot that they're in, and they kind of need to have a good look at what's going on with this stuff. Go to the currency layer right over here. We can see all these countries use the Central Asian currency, whilst these ones use the Southern Indian currency. So they could kind of try and bring them together, really, but they don't know which currency to use. But at this point, the stronger one is probably the Southern Indian one. So in an effort to bring the people of these two areas together, they're going to be reuniting the currencies of these nations, and all of them will be joining the same economic alliance. Actually, scratch that for a second. I didn't mean to put you guys in there, because the Central Asian country is kind of not distant from the other allies, but they don't quite feel the same. So both these countries will join the Indian Economic Alliance, and we see, of course, another country rejoin, which is the Indian country. Now, India's in a weird spot because a lot of their land isn't really core Indian territory, because a certain Gangetic country took that. But they will rejoin the alliance, and now in India, it's just Southern India and kind of Bengal who haven't joined, and Southern India doesn't really know what they're doing. They're just not really sure. They were like, oh, I'm going to help the Arabic Union, and they don't really help them at all. So, they don't know what they're doing. Anyway, over here to North Africa, there's this economic alliance, and some countries want a remaking of it under maybe not a new currency, but under a new framework and new ideas, as the Moroccans, weirdly enough, will position themselves as the new kind of benefactors of this region, creating this diamond alliance over here, the Diamond Economic Alliance, and they offer it up to all countries who use the Carthaginian currency. So we're going to see a number of nations leave, whatever it's called. Yes, good job. First off, Ghana. Ghana's kind of mean. Leave this economic alliance, but they believe the Moroccans are a better hope and like a better country to align with. So they leave the alliance along with this greenish colored country and the purple one over here. And then following that, all through these different countries who left, we're rejoining an economic alliance, being the economic alliance of Morocco. Now they could definitely introduce their own currency here into North Africa and try to be more successful, but at this point they're all recognized that West Africa is entirely cooked, and they just need to try and be peaceful for a bit. Libya could also join, but the thing is, a lot of these countries now have the Mesopotamian currency. Apparently Libya doesn't, but there's a lot of Mesopotamian currency areas, so yeah, it would be kind of hard to get a lot of these other countries to join, but there's definitely opportunity in the Gulf of Guinea area. Anyway, there's another thing I wanted to do, and I forgot what that was, so good job me. Anyway, nukes dropped, probably could be taken off. Yeah, I remember. Well, we need to head over to the Franco Union. Let's take off nukes. the Franco Union because they have just created something kind of interesting, and it's going to be called the Nations Alliance, or the NA. So that's kind of cool. But it's not only the Franco Union who'll be creating the NA, as there are five other starting countries. Oh, what's the word? I don't remember. But so 6 in total. So 6 countries will start this organization, being the Franco Union, Norway, Italy, and then over in Asia, Korea, the Ganjiatic country, and Indochina. So these 6 very powerful countries will create this nations alliance together. I've also made a map for all the countries who are in this alliance. So as you can see, in America, it's just the Americans. That's kind of sad. But over to Europe, it's quite a few more countries, especially Western European countries. As we see the Pink Spanish, the Franco Union, Catalonia, two other nations. Germany doesn't join, neither does Finland. That's because they're isolationist as hell. These 2 Eastern European countries join. I suppose it's kind of grateful. Both of these guys join, but not Turkey and the other ones. Many of the countries around all these guys' colonies will join, but not all of them. Hejaz doesn't join, but the small Medina city-state does, so that's nice. Some of the Central Asian countries join, like these 3. Aral's pretty confident in this, so they wanted to join. And then we've seen the Ganjiatic country influence some countries around them to join it. Well, all these countries who started it, they have a lot of influence over countries joining it. Indochina manages to influence these 3 or 4. Also Korea as well. Korea gets a lot of China in, apart from all 3 of these Chinese countries who just... Oh, and this one. Who don't join. Bengal doesn't join because they're way too neutral. Both the Sumatran countries and the Borneo country join as well, but not the Southern Philippines. And then Australia doesn't join. And there's not a single country from South America or Africa. So it's not super successful, but it is kind of good. So that's nice. Anyway, let's head over to another war, which is caused because of bad border drawing during the peace treaty of World War III. So I forgot what war we were on. Don't worry, it's going to get a lot more confusing as we go forward. But the Caucasians are angry about not getting all their previous land back. They had their borders restored to their pre or post World War I borders, and they wanted the pre-World War II borders just before the beginning, or just before they were annexed by the Arabic Union or Mesopotamia. So they're going to invade Turkey to get that land back. The Turks have a very poorly set up country at this point. Whilst Caucasia, they're kind of doing a lot better at being a country. They're quite a lot wealthier than the Turks. And although this nation is definitely like a mid country, Caucasia's probably upper mid. They're kind of close to a top 20, if not top 20. And they managed to take the Turkish capital, and it's not even that long of a war. The Turkish capitulate pretty quickly, and since, the entire world is economically dying, this is just a horrible time to be alive, really. Just, you don't want to. They're going to accept the peace terms of the Caucasians, and in the peace treaty, I'm just going to bring back these borders here. That's why I had this map up, just for this bit here. Also, we can just look at map number 30, or layer 30. This is episode 72, I believe. That's crazy. And the world has changed quite a lot since then. Anyway, the Caucasians will be able to annex all this eastern territory from the Turkish. It's not super important stuff, but it's like 4 cities, and it's really, really close to your capital as well. So it's not amazing, but Caucasia has a far longer coastline now, along the Black Sea. Anyway, where do we want to go now? There's a ton more countries in the world that are kind of waiting to do things, and I'm just like, well, I don't know if I want to do all those things now, but I kind of do, because there's so many different things I could do. But I don't know. This episode, I feel like could be more entertaining, but also it's just kind of difficult, because it's really hard to just tell you just how bad the world economy is at this point. It is so incredibly awful, because all the major countries in the world have lost all their money and lost everything, and just the world cannot recover from that very well. We are going to go down here to Southern Arabia, because a war will already be starting in the remnants of the Arabic Union. Wait a minute, Oman, you're not meant to own that. As this bluish country right over here will be declaring war on the very, very small lilac one. They don't believe this country should have been brought into existence, and really it shouldn't have been. It's not a very economically viable area. Well, neither is this bit. It's also, where are the nukes at? Let's go to Turkey for a second. How many nukes are in this territory? Literally none. Okay. None of these areas got nuked either, so they're kind of chilling, I guess. That's surprising. Anyway, they don't believe this should have been made in the peace treaty. It was an old area of the Norwegian colony, which is kind of down here. And they're like, why did you get brought back? Because nobody really needed you to exist. So what they're going to do is invade into this country, pushing along the southern coast. This country doesn't really have its own identity, and although the pink one does have more of an identity because of their history being colonized by the Norwegians, they don't have anything but an identity. They have got, like, no money. They could have potentially made a lot of money into the future with, having a very strategic position, but most countries are isolationist at this point, so it's not going to be that beneficial, and they lose their capital city after not too long, but the blue country suffers a lot more losses than they potentially should have done, as they take the capital city of this country, and it's taken out of existence. And there we go. Arabia has lost another nation, well, like its first one for a while, and that's probably going to do it for today's episode. There's a whole lot of tension points in the world, and there's loads more cool things we can do as we move towards the next era in world history, which I'm super, super excited for. But yeah, I think I've got to leave it here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Like, subscribe, comment, and goodbye. Have a nice rest of your day.